Most people will tell you Airbnb is a side hustle, a way to make a little extra cash from a spare bedroom or a rental you're not using. They'll say it's passive income, easy money, a nice supplement to your real job. And they're not wrong, technically, but they're describing the surface of something they've never actually touched. Because there's a version of Airbnb that nobody talks about publicly. Not the version where you list your guest room and make $400 a month. The version where 5 very specific rules, applied in a very specific order, turn an ordinary person with no real estate experience into someone whose monthly cash flow exceeds what most surgeons take home. And the strangest part isn't the money. The strangest part is what happens to you after the money shows up. Because the thing that changes isn't your bank account. It's the moment you realize you have no idea what to do with freedom once you actually have it. There's a belief you're carrying right now that feels so true, it doesn't even register as a belief. It feels like gravity, like a fact of the universe. The belief is this: if you earn more, you become more free. You've structured your entire life around this assumption. The degree, the career moves, the promotions, the salary negotiations, the late nights that turned into late years. All of it pointed in one direction. More income equals more control. And every time you hit a new number, something was supposed to click. Something was supposed to release. But it didn't. Instead, the raise came with a bigger apartment because you couldn't stay in the old one. Not practically. Psychologically. The bonus came with a better car, because the old one suddenly felt like a contradiction. The promotion came with expectations that ate your evenings, your weekends, the version of yourself that used to have time to think. You didn't get freer. You got more expensive. And the more expensive you got, the more you needed the next raise, the next bonus, the next rung. Not to grow, to maintain. You are running faster to stay in the same place. And the treadmill is so smooth, so well designed, that you've mistaken the running for progress. Here's what nobody told you. Income is not wealth. Income is the price someone pays you to show up. Wealth is what remains when you stop showing up. And for most people earning 6 figures, if they stopped showing up tomorrow, the whole thing collapses in 60 days. That's not freedom. That's dependency with better furniture. Think about a river. Not a wide, lazy one, a narrow mountain river. The kind that cuts through rock over centuries. The water doesn't carve the canyon by being powerful. It carves it by being relentless and by having nowhere else to go. The channel is tight, so all the force concentrates into a single line. That's what Airbnb does when you understand it correctly. Not as a platform, not as a listing site, as a channel. Every other wealth-building vehicle you've been told about, stocks, retirement accounts, traditional real estate, they're wide rivers. The money spreads out. Returns are slow, diffuse, dependent on decades of patience and market conditions you can't control. You're told to be diversified, which is another way of saying your money should be everywhere and concentrated nowhere. Airbnb, done with precision, is the narrow channel. You take the same amount of capital, and instead of spreading it thin across instruments that return 8% annually if you're lucky, you force it through a system that can return 8% monthly. Not because the money is magic, because the channel is tight, because every dollar has a job. Because the rules, and there are exactly 5, keep the water from spilling over the banks and dissipating into nothing. Rule 1 isn't about property. It's not about location or design or pricing. Rule 1 is about something most people never think about, and I'll get to it. But first you need to understand why the river metaphor matters beyond the math. Because the people who fail at Airbnb, and there are thousands of them, didn't fail because they picked the wrong city or the wrong couch. They failed because they built a wide river. They spread out. They tried to be everywhere. They listed a property and hoped the platform would do the work. They treated it like a savings account with a login page. The people who built real wealth through this, the ones clearing 15, 20, 30,000 a month from properties they don't even own, they did the opposite. They narrowed the channel until every dollar moved with force. And the 5 rules are the walls of that channel. Remove any one of them and the water spills. Keep all 5 in place and the pressure builds until the current cuts through rock. So what actually happens inside someone who crosses that line? Not the financial line, the psychological one. Because there's a specific moment, and it's not when the first big check hits. It's not when you see 5 figures in a month, or when your Airbnb income passes your salary. It's quieter than that. It's the morning you wake up and realize you didn't check your work email first. Not because you forgot, because it didn't matter. Your body knew before your mind did that the dependency was gone. Something in the architecture of your nervous system shifted. The low-grade hum of financial anxiety, the one that's been there so long you thought it was just the sound of being an adult, went silent. And in that silence, something terrifying happens. You have to decide what your life is actually for. This is the part nobody prepares you for. When the money pressure lifts, it doesn't reveal happiness underneath. It reveals a question you've been avoiding for years, maybe decades. The job gave you structure. The bills gave you urgency. The scarcity gave you an identity, the person who's working towards something. Remove all of that, and what's left? Most people who build significant Airbnb income, the real operators, not the hobbyists, go through a period of profound disorientation after they succeed. They've spent so long optimizing for money that they never develop the skill of living without the optimization. They're free and they have no idea what to do with it. That's why Rule 1, the one I haven't named yet, isn't a financial rule at all. Rule 1 is this: know what the money is for before you make it. Not vaguely, not retirement someday, not freedom in the abstract. A specific answer to a specific question. If I never had to work again starting next Tuesday, what would I do on Wednesday? If you can't answer that with something that makes your chest tight, something real, then the money will just become another treadmill. A nicer one, faster, with a better view, but still a treadmill. The people who get rich from Airbnb and stay miserable skipped this rule. The people who get rich and build something extraordinary started here. Rule 2 is where the mechanics begin, and where most people's assumptions collapse entirely. You don't need to own property. This sentence breaks something in the mind of anyone who grew up believing that real estate wealth means buying buildings. But the highest margin Airbnb operators in the country own almost nothing. They lease properties from landlords, furnish them, list them, and keep the difference between what they pay in rent and what guests pay per night. The model is called rental arbitrage, and it sounds too simple to work, which is exactly why it works. Because the people who think it's too simple never try it, which means less competition for the people who do. A 2-bedroom apartment that rents for $1,800 a month can generate $4,000 to $5,000 on Airbnb in the right market. That's not a hypothetical. That's a Tuesday in Scottsdale or Nashville or a dozen other cities where short-term rental demand outpaces supply by a factor most people wouldn't believe. The gap between the lease cost and the booking revenue is your margin. And because you don't own the property, you don't carry the mortgage, the maintenance risk, the property tax, the 6-figure down payment that keeps most people locked out of real estate entirely. You carry a lease and furniture. That's it. Rule 3 compounds Rule 2. Never operate a single unit. 1 property is a job. 2 is a business. 5 is a system. The people who stay stuck treat each listing like a standalone thing. The people who break through treat it like a portfolio. They systematize cleaning, guest communication, pricing, maintenance. They build a machine that runs on process, not on their personal time. By Unit 3, most of the infrastructure is already built. Unit 4 and 5 slide into the existing system with almost no additional effort. The marginal cost of each new unit drops, while the marginal revenue stays flat or grows. This is where the math stops being interesting and starts being absurd. 5 units averaging $3,000 in monthly profit each. That's $15,000 a month. That's $180,000 a year. From properties you don't own, in a business that didn't exist 3 years ago, using a skill set that nobody taught you in school. Rule 4 is the one that separates the people who plateau from the people who multiply. Reinvest before you reward. The first instinct when the money arrives, and it arrives faster than most people expect, is to upgrade your life. Better apartment, better car, better everything. This is the moment the river spills over the banks. Every dollar you redirect into lifestyle is a dollar that stops compounding. The operators who reach true financial escape velocity take their first 12 to 18 months of profit and pour it back into the channel. More units, better furnishings, stronger systems, deeper cash reserves. They delay the lifestyle upgrade not out of discipline, but out of understanding. They know something that took them time to learn. The money isn't the reward. The optionality is. Rule 5 is the one that most people never reach because they burn out or cash out before they get here. Build the asset, then remove yourself from it. A business that requires you is a job with better margins. A business that runs without you is wealth. The final rule is about transition. Hiring a property manager or a co-host. Automating pricing with software. Creating standard operating procedures that someone else can execute. The goal isn't to work less because you're lazy. The goal is to work less because the business becomes more valuable when it doesn't depend on a single human brain. A self-running Airbnb portfolio is a sellable asset. A portfolio that requires you every day is just sophisticated self-employment. The difference between those two things is the difference between being rich and being free. Now here's where the numbers confirm what you've already started to feel. A single, well-run Airbnb unit in a mid-tier market generates between $25,000 and $45,000 in annual revenue. After expenses, cleaning, supplies, platform fees, software, you're looking at roughly 60 to 70% margins if you're operating on a lease model. Call it $18,000 to $30,000 in annual profit per unit. 5 units at the conservative end, that's $90,000 a year in profit. At the higher end, $150,000. No mortgage, no property tax liability, no 6-figure down payment. Startup cost per unit runs between $3,000 and $8,000, mostly furniture and supplies. So for the price of a used Honda Civic, you can launch a unit that pays for itself in 60 to 90 days and generates profit every month after that. Run those numbers over 3 years with reinvestment and moderate expansion, and you arrive at a place that doesn't seem real to most people. $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year? From a business that started with a leased apartment and a trip to IKEA? The math isn't complicated. It's just unfamiliar. And unfamiliar math feels like fantasy until you watch it execute in a spreadsheet that's tracking real bookings, real revenue, real deposits hitting a real bank account every 2 weeks. Here's what changes about you once the math becomes real. Not your bank account, you. The way you sit in a conversation shifts. Not because you're arrogant, because you're not calculating anymore. You're not running background math on whether you can afford to disagree with your boss, whether you can take 3 days off, whether the dinner bill matters. The calculation stops. And when the calculation stops, something else starts. You listen differently. You negotiate differently. Not harder, softer. Because you don't need the deal. Any deal. You can walk away from every table you sit at, and that changes the way people treat you at that table. Optionality doesn't look like power from the outside. It looks like calm. It looks like the person who pauses before responding. The person who doesn't fill silence with nervousness. The person who can hear a bad offer and simply say nothing. And that silence, that comfortable, unhurried silence, is worth more than any negotiation tactic ever written in any business book. Because tactics are what you use when you need the outcome. Silence is what you use when you don't. This is the identity shift that money enables, but doesn't guarantee. Because plenty of people make this kind of money and never develop the calm. They stay anxious, stay grasping, stay performing. The money changed their account, but not their operating system. The ones who actually transform are the ones who started with Rule 1, who knew what the money was for, who built the channel not as an escape from their life, but as a bridge to a specific version of it. They don't talk about their Airbnb income at parties. They don't post their revenue screenshots. They don't need you to know. And that need to not need you to know, that's the signal. That's how you recognize someone who crossed over. Not by what they show, by what they've stopped needing to show. And now the part that matters more than everything that came before it. The mistake. The exact error that nearly everyone makes at this stage. The stage where the money is flowing. The system is working. The freedom is real. They scale too fast. Not too fast financially. Too fast emotionally. They're so intoxicated by what the money represents that they start chasing the number instead of the structure. They add units before the systems can support them. They hire before they've built processes. They expand into new markets before they've mastered the one they're in. And the river, the one that was so powerful because it was narrow, starts to widen. The force dissipates. The margins thin. The quality drops. Guest reviews slip. Occupancy rates fall. And suddenly, the thing that was generating $30,000 a month is generating 12 and requiring twice the work. This is where most Airbnb operators quietly fail. Not at the beginning, at the moment of success. Because success without structure is just chaos with better revenue. And chaos always catches up. The operators who maintain, who build lasting wealth, who actually reach the point where they can stop, they resist the urge to go wider. They go deeper. Better systems, not more units. Higher quality, not higher volume. They understand something that sounds paradoxical, but is absolutely true. The way to make more money is to stop trying to make more money and start trying to make the machine run without you. The money follows the structure. It always does. Chase the money directly and it runs. Build the structure and the money has nowhere else to go. There was a question buried in the first 30 seconds of this. Not stated directly, implied. What happens after you make the money? Not how do you spend it? Not how do you invest it? What happens to you? And the answer? The one that the Subaru driver knew and the six-figure earner still hasn't figured out is this. Wealth is not money. Wealth is the number of bad options you can survive without fear. A job you hate, you can leave. A relationship that drains you, you can walk away. A market that crashes, you can wait. A deal that smells wrong, you can say no. An industry that shifts, you can adapt slowly on your terms without panic. That's what the 5 rules build. Not a bank account, a buffer. A space between you and every bad option the world will throw at you for the rest of your life. The money is just the material. The rules are just the method. The real product is the person you become when you no longer make decisions from fear. And that person, the one sitting quietly with no urgent emails and no desperate calculations and no performance left to maintain, That person was always available to you. You just couldn't afford to meet them yet.